This is the Book Legion Podcast, where we review thought-provoking books to give our Legionnaires the knowledge they need to dominate the next level of their life.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining me on the Book Legion this week. This week I'm going to be reviewing the book, The Kybalion, by the three initiates. So this book is based on the Hermetic principles. There is no authors. The book was written by three hermeticists that have remained anonymous. So I've covered another book called the Hermetica that I covered about 3 months ago. I wanted to do a deeper dive just for my own exploration in the Hermetic teachings. This book is very tactical since it's written by people who actually study this. They believe in it. It is their doctrine. So if you're unfamiliar with what the Hermetic principles is or what Hermeticism is, it's basically an ancient philosophy that all the great religions stem from. And basically the foundation of the principle is that what they call the odd is what they call the all is what most people would call God or universe, Allah, whatever. And the principle of the all is that everything is a mental construct in the mind of God right now, right? Or whatever you insert term here for God for you. But basically they refer to as the all. The creator is probably the better term to dispel what they're talking about. So that is really the Hermetic principles, that everything really comes down, everything is mental. So this is just simply a mental construct. Even in our experience in this reality, this is simple mental construct, that there is no solidity. The only solidity that we have is that you're an extension of the source having what seems like is a experience through matter, but it's not. This is all in the mind of God or of the all. And so I think that that's just fascinating. It kind of resonates with me on a really deep level. If you think about what the cosmos means or what the universe means, there's no way to know, and this kind of goes into simulation theory, right? If you're like, basically, do you have VR goggles on and then all of a sudden when you die, you take them off and you're in an actual different type of reality? Or are you someone else's manifested thoughts is kind of basically what they're talking about? Or is this, something completely different? Or there is no God. That's not definitely what they believe. But a lot of these teachings got passed down into the Egyptian mystery schools, which then kind of fast forward today would be more or less modern day Freemasonry, is they teach a lot of the Hermetic principles. So they are divine in their way that they think of having a creator, having something larger than yourself, right? The all. So there is a lot of spiritual doctrine. It is spiritual doctrine, really what it is. And it's really teaching you the laws of the universe and how to navigate the mind. Because if the mind is the all and you can learn how to control and temper and know how to facilitate the laws of the universe to go in conjunction with your mind, then there's a lot that you can control in this life. And then when you can control a lot in this life and you live a conscious life, then you have a greater opportunity for fulfillment, for happiness, and for growth, and to really have a better relationship with the creator, the source, with God, whatever you want to call it. So I want to touch on some of my favorite topics of the book. The first one was just that concept of the mind, right? That the first principle is mentalism, and that is just dispelling this myth that there's some type of divide between us and the source or the creator or God, and there isn't. That we are simply a mental construct of the all. So the way that I look at this and the way that they start to break it down is that if you're in the mind of God or in the mind of the all, then essentially you are God. You are the all, right? You are the creator. And this is when you take apart the word universe, if you look at what that really means, is that you are the universe, right? Uni is for one. And so this is simply you being able to, your thoughts create your reality because you are reality. You are God. You're an extension of God. And I think that in a lot of the ancient texts, this whole idea of the divine spark is getting to that you are a part of the core, a part of the source. You're simply an extension of the source, having what you perceived as a multi-sensory experience. But really, it's simply in the mind, the construct and mind of God. And if you're in the construct and mind of God, then really this is all just mentalism, and you're simply in the mind of yourself because you are God. I know that's a really hard thought to go deep on. It's something I contemplate often, but it makes me feel closer for me personally, spiritually, to understanding that I am a divine being, that we're all eternal. And I think it also gives you a lot of clarity in these principles, these teachings in Christianity and Judaism, and even in Hinduism, all these different, even Old Norse culture, with understanding of how to treat others, right? Do unto others as we do it to yourself. And so what that's really saying is that, you're in the mind struck, in the mental construct of God, and you are God, right? Because we're all in the mind of God. So there is no distinction. There is no definity between a human experience and the source having experience, because it is all the source manifesting experience through you. Then your neighbor is also God, which is just an extension of yourself. And so this is where if you wouldn't treat yourself that way, then you wouldn't treat your neighbor that way, because your neighbor is you. And that's just a really fascinating concept that, of course, at least in this realm or this reality, that we are not getting well, which is probably stagnating a lot of our collective consciousness of evolving. So the second principle I want to talk to you about is this principle of rhythm. So the principle of rhythm is best looked at as basically a swinging pendulum of life, right? Sometimes you're going to have extreme lows, but also times you're going to have extreme highs. And we've all experienced this, the peaks and the valleys of life. But oftentimes what people do is that they don't realize when they're in extreme low, that cause and effect, and the way that the universal laws work, that when you're in extreme low, that you'll experience an extreme high as well. Now, everything is finite, so this experience of extreme low is temporary. It will end, and you will experience a extreme high, extreme joy, extreme love, extreme happiness. But what most people do is they don't walk into their greatness. They don't try to maximize their potential. And so they live in a smaller pendulum because they don't take risk. They don't walk into opportunity. They don't try to maximize their own human potential. They're missing the lessons learned. So they're repeating these cycles. And oftentimes, this is where we talked about this idea of the comfort zone, right? Is all about the principle of rhythm. And so what I look at is like most people will live their life like a -3 and a +3 if we're looking on a linear scale of say -10 to 10. And so what I think that the more that you are willing to put yourself in the suck or potential suffering or potential loss or failure when it comes to business or relationships, and you go all in and you're willing to take risk because you realize that there is no failure, everything is just simply a learning lesson, and you're going to have extreme low. Maybe you're starting a business and man, this sucks. I'm not making money for 2 years, but I'm going at it every single day and I'm learning every day and I'm staying positive every single day, but this is really, really hard. Eventually, that pendulum is going to swing back around, and that 2 years it was a grind, it was really hard, may pay off with 10 years of greatness and joy and ecstasy like you couldn't imagine. Or the person that simply likes to play it safe, and maybe they don't get the raise they want, so that's like a -2 to them, and then the next year maybe they get a little 10K bump, and now they're at a +2. They kind of just stay in this comfort bubble. They never get to experience the extreme highs of life, the extreme greatness or fulfillment, because they're also not putting themselves in a position to understand what maybe true suffering or despair or failure might feel like as well. And so that just, to me, is always a good reminder that there's this pendulum, that the more I put myself out there to be uncomfortable or recognize that I'm in a situation that's no longer serving me and move into something that's a bit more uncomfortable for a new opportunity or a new challenge in my life, that at first it's going to be really, really hard, but the laws of the universe, I'm going to have a big upswing on the other side that's going to be way more fulfilling than I ever could have imagined, and the best thing that could ever happen to me versus me just staying right in my comfort zone. And the last thing I want to talk with you guys about is this principle of polarity. And the different principles supersede one another. There are, again, like the laws of the universe, there's certain laws that will supersede other laws, right? And so the principle of polarity actually supersedes the principle of rhythm. And so the principle of polarity, if you think about it, is like a straight line. And we use heat for a great example. So really all that heat is a certain vibrational frequency. Anything in the universe is simply just energy resonating at a different frequency. So we have cold and we have hot. And all the cold is really doing is resonating at a certain vibrational frequency, and hot is resonating at a different vibrational frequency, but they're on the same plane nonetheless. So just the vibration on the same plane is different. So that is the principle of polarity. And when you think about life, the best way to put this is in terms of emotion. You have this polarity of emotions. Emotions are on the same plane as far as a cause and effect experience. Now it's up to you to determine whether or not the experience was positive or negative. And this is where you start to have mindful practices and recognize that you're in control and you dictate your emotions, and why it's so important to be conscious of your self-talk and your emotions, because your emotions dictate your behavior dictates your habits dictate the quality of your life. And so it's very much a cause and effect relationship. So when I look at the principle of polarity, if you understand the principle of rhythm, where you can have extreme lows, but when most people have extreme lows, they go into a negative mindset. When you go into a negative mindset, you resonate at a certain type of frequency. When you resonate at a low frequency, you get low frequency results, right? And so you can see the true masters that are able to master their mind of polarity when they have a certain event happens, as opposed to being uncontrolled and having an unconscious mind. They simply see the experience for what it is and choose to resonate at a high frequency and choose to view that experience as positive. So let's just say you lose your job. This is just a great example, and it's very simplistic to understand these two principles and how they work with one another. So if you lose your job, most people would go into a scarcity, fearful mindset, which is a very low vibrational frequency. Fear is the lowest vibrational frequency that exists in this plane, where love is the highest. So if you have fear as the lowest and you lose your job because now you're fearful, how I'm going to pay my bills, how I'm going to feed my kids, right? You start to manifest unconscious behavior that would dictate other things that you would attract more low frequency results. And so this now might manifest into you becoming angry, explosive with your anger, which then cause an effect of that is you have a worse relationship with your spouse, which could lead to divorce. You'd lead to divorce. Now, as opposed to you not losing your house because of you're losing your job, now you're losing your house because you're in a bad divorce, which then causes you more strain financially. And you can see where I'm going with that. Now, but the knowing about the principle of polarity, it allows you to say, okay, I lost my job. What was my lesson learned from that? And I'm going to choose to treat this as a positive opportunity for me to go and find a better job. I've always wanted to go back to school to become XYZ. Now is my time, my opportunity for me to go learn the new skill set, for me to go get a job that makes twice as much. And in doing that, and mastering the conscious mind and dictating and choosing how you view and how you perceive and how you feel emotionally about the experience, you can override the principle of rhythm and not experience the extreme suffering by understanding where you're at with the principle of polarity. And when the Kybalion went through this, I was like, man, this is what the masters do. Sometimes you just see people that you're just like, man, this person never fucking loses. They're winning, they're winning, they're winning, they're winning. And it's because, like, Tony Robbins is a great example. He understands that when an event happens, you have a choice. And when you choose to feel fear and have scarcity mindset and you resonate at a low frequency, you're going to start generating low frequency results, which again will keep you on that rhythm pendulum in the suffering page for much longer than you need to, and maybe more suffering than you need to. So oftentimes people have this, where you hear like addicts, they have to hit rock bottom before they can swing back up, right? So the lows can get real low if you don't have the right mindset to pull yourself out. So just understanding that through mindful practices, breath work, meditation, yoga, you can be conscious of the mind and you can start to listen to the way that you talk to yourself. Listen to your body's physiology when you're going through what is perceived as a negative experience, and then rewrite that course and choose to have a positive experience. Then you can negate that huge pendulum swing and continue to be on this side of polarity and on the uphill of the principle of rhythm. And that's how the greats then start to, the Kybalion talks about, they don't try to work against the law. They actually move into the law and understand how to move with the law. So they become masters of the universe, so to speak, because they understand these simple principles that everything is mental. So if you master the mental construct of the all, then you can have a beautiful, beautiful experience. And when you die, you get absorbed back into the source. So for me, it was just, hey man, just be really conscious of my emotions, stay positive, stay fulfilled, treat everything as a learning lesson, understand that there is a swing of balances of negative and positive, but really all is simply a plane of vibrational frequencies. And when you resonate at a higher level, you produce higher level results. And so being a master of your own vibrational frequency and understanding when you're starting to swing back in a lower vibrational state and pulling yourself back out of it mentally, you stay constantly on a higher frequency state, and you're in a higher frequency state, you produce high frequency results, thus having a fulfilling life. So the Kybalion was not very long, only about 121 pages, but honestly, this isn't a book I read in a week. It's taken me 3 months because I could only read sometimes 2 or 3 pages, and I had to really sit with it and think about the principles, or go back and reread a chapter or a principle. And so it wasn't one that I just banged out for the Book Legion. It was something that I took seriously. It's different applications that I've been trying to put into my life and try to catch myself real time with how I'm viewing an experience. And I'll give you actually a quick example. I know this has been a long-winded podcast. My wife today, we're moving potentially, and so there's a lot of stress about getting the house ready, and she kind of snapped on me, which is totally understandable. You know, anybody who's married or anybody who's in a relationship knows that sometimes you're just having a bad day and you end up snapping on your spouse, and she did. And normally I would have snapped right back, and I felt immediately triggered when she talked to me, and I took a deep breath and I said, okay, she's simply just projecting what she's feeling on the inside. Now, I can choose to be angry and snap back and perpetuate this to be much worse, or I can simply just say, hey, I'm sorry and you're feeling that way. I'm going to go excuse myself and go in the other room and do X, Y, Z. I'll come back to you when you're a bit calmer. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't lose my cool. I didn't snap back at her. I just simply said, hey, I'm going to excuse myself until we can be a little bit more level-headed. I went and did that for about 10 minutes. I came back out. She apologized. We moved on, and the day went totally fine, right? And so that was just me. I was able to catch myself in that moment, not snapping, being in control of my emotions, and not holding any resentment for her either, and not being angry with her, still carrying myself in a higher vibrational state, handling the situation correctly, and allowed us to move through the day much, much better. So go check out the book. It's only $9.99 on Amazon. So I'll post a link to it in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. It's really cool. And you can see the symbol on the front of the book is the Philosopher's Stone, which is the alchemist symbol. And I think what this is, you know, really alchemy is about how to change your inner state, right? That whole metaphor of turning lead into gold is really about how to change yourself from lead to gold. And this is what Jesus talked about when he talked about turning water into wine, how to take something that's unrefined and make it into refined. And that is the essence of life, is self-evaluation and evolution. So thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it, you guys. Please share with 3 or 4 like-minded friends, especially if you know that are spiritual people. They're into doing better work and trying to change the course and trajectory of their life. Hopefully this may help them. Again, the book's $10. Go pick it up. Thanks so much.